Dead bodies stopped bothering me after my fourth or fifth one. After a while they stop feeling like people and start feeling like problems you have to deal with. Car accidents, heart attacks, overdoses. I've seen all kinds of ways people die, and when you work long enough in emergency services, death becomes just another part of the job. Sometimes I even joked about it to cope. Dark humor, they call it. I know that makes me sound like a jerk, and maybe I am, because lately I've been thinking I might have deserved what happened to me. It all started about a week ago when my crew got called for a routine welfare check because a neighbor hadn't been seen in days. Usually those calls end with us finding someone who passed away quietly at home. When we arrived, the house looked normal enough, old and quiet, nothing unusual. I stepped up to the front door with a Halligan tool to force entry and noticed the welcome mat that read, "May all who enter as guests leave as friends," but the doorframe around it told a different story. Jagged, angry symbols carved into the wood like some kind of ritual markings that made my stomach tighten, though I ignored the feeling and broke the door open with one hard swing. The door creaked inward like it didn't want me coming in, and my flashlight cut through the darkness of the living room where newspapers covered the windows, blocking out the sunlight. Then my light caught bones hanging from the ceiling, animal bones tied together with twine, and as I scanned the room it got worse. With small animal carcasses nailed to the walls in strange triangle patterns. "What the hell?" I muttered, turning back to signal my crew. Our probie Andrew poked his head in for a second and immediately backed out saying it looked like some Blair Witch type stuff, but I joked that it was just someone with terrible interior decorating and stepped inside anyway. That's when the smell hit me, the smell of death, something you never forget once you've experienced it. "Hey LT," I called out while brushing a hanging bone away from my helmet, possible DOA. My boots stuck slightly to the floor as I walked deeper inside, and I didn't want to think about what they were sticking to. "Fire department." I shouted, but no one answered. Moving through the hallway I tried not to stare at the red symbols painted across the walls, the same kind carved into the doorframe. Eventually I reached the kitchen doorway where a curtain of bone chimes rattled softly as I pushed through, and that's when I saw her. An elderly woman was lying on the kitchen table with butcher knives driven through her wrists and ankles into the wood beneath, pinning her down. Strange symbols were carved into her skin, her body badly decomposed except where the carvings were, and melted candles surrounded her like some ritual setup. Her mouth had been forced open and stuffed with small animal bones, their tips blackened like they'd been burned. It was one of the most disturbing things I'd ever seen, and the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "Damn. Granny, you into some weird stuff, huh? Real classy, right?" Not long after, police arrived and sealed the house as a crime scene, sending us back to the station since there was nothing more we could do. There's an old superstition firefighters and EMS crews talk about, that when you deal with a dead body you should wipe your feet on a doormat before leaving so nothing follows you back, but I never believed in that stuff. And that night I didn't do it. Later at the station I was brushing my teeth before bed when I noticed something strange in the bathroom mirror. Those same red symbols were on the wall behind me. I spun around, but the wall was completely normal, so I assumed my nerves were getting to me after what we'd seen earlier. But the moment I turned back to the sink the mirror suddenly ripped off the wall and shattered across the floor. I cursed loudly, and Allison called from the hallway asking if I was alright. I told her the mirror just fell and grabbed a broom to clean it up, but while sweeping the shards one piece caught my attention because inside its reflection I could see the kitchen table from that house, and the old woman still pinned to it. I tilted the shard and the image disappeared, tilted it back and she was there again. When I leaned closer her head suddenly snapped toward me, and inside the reflection she slowly pulled the knives from her arms and legs one by one without making a sound, slid off the table, and began dragging herself across the floor toward the edge of the reflection until she disappeared. For a moment the shard showed only my terrified face, then suddenly her face slammed against the inside of the glass staring directly at me. I screamed and dropped it, and the shard shattered into dozens of smaller pieces across the bathroom floor, every single one reflecting her face watching me. I ran out of the bathroom and rinsed the cut on my hand under the sink, my heart pounding as I wrapped it in a bandage and tried to convince myself I was losing my mind. Hours later I was still lying awake staring at the ceiling when something wet slapped against the bunk room window and a choking voice outside whispered, "Found you." I couldn't move or breathe as the bunk room door slowly creaked open and that same rotten smell of death filled the room while wet footsteps approached my bed and stopped right beside me. I whispered the only word I could manage, "Help," and then she leaned over me with the same rotten smile, bones still stuck in her mouth, and drove a blade straight through the cut in my hand into the mattress. I screamed and the lights snapped on as everyone woke up, but she was gone. They told me it was just a nightmare, but that was a week ago, and the wound in my hand still hasn't healed. Tomorrow I have to go back to the firehouse, and I'm terrified she'll be waiting for me there.